Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Tim Cyclesman Wood, editor of Cycles News and Views on Cyclesman.com. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Jim, thanks as always for having me.
Janet Yellen, now in charge of the U.S. Treasury, hinting that interest rates are going to be going up, maybe not tomorrow or the day after that, but sometime soon. Does she have much influence there, or say the Fed, about real interest rates, not what they say the rates are?
Well, they obviously have an influence, but ultimately, as we've talked about, the market always decides. Historically they follow the market no matter what. And I think what she's trying to do is influence the market with a comment like that. But I do not see rates going up anytime in the foreseeable future. In fact, we've been talking about that. The short end has been at zero for all intents and purposes, and has continued to contract since it bounced out of the March low last year. And now what we've seen, more recently is, we had some intermediate degree lows on the long end. And when I say intermediate degree lows, we had an intermediate degree decline in bonds on the long end, and rates have risen. Well, now that is reversing, and so the long end is now getting back in sync with the short end. So what I'm saying is I see continued pressure on interest rates, and I think what they're trying to do there is game the market a little bit. We've talked about that, how their Fed speak is one of the tools that they have, and I think they're trying to maybe talk rates up a little bit to further justify the inflationary talk that, is so prevalent today.
Now, of course, we know there is some inflation, but the official government figures don't tell you the real story, because both in Canada and the U.S., the CPI doesn't include housing. It doesn't include fuel. Well, take a look at what housing has done over the past year. The price of a house has skyrocketed. The lumber that goes into it has skyrocketed. And yet the inflation index still barely wavering around 2%. Is it time for the government to start using real numbers again, like they did before the collusion between Chrétien and Bush, to get rid of those numbers?
Yeah, exactly. No doubt. What we have seen with commodity prices in the last year, post-COVID, is just been insanity. I mean, lumber, it is just, the chart is parabolic. Obviously gold is up, crude oil is up big off of the low. I mean, it was negative. Now we're, $65 range or something like that I think as of yesterday. And, the CRB index is obviously up off of, we had major cycle lows in CRB. There's a 3-year cycle that bottomed, last March, April. And we've seen the rally out of that low. So yes, we've seen, advancing commodity prices. But when, it's still, when you look at the CRB, it's still only back to the 2018 levels. And so I'm not denying, you'd be a moron to deny what we're seeing with one trip to the grocery store or to Home Depot to buy lumber or whatever the case may be. Yes, I get that. But what I'm saying is that I think this is a counter trend, advancing commodities. I think this is a lot like, the best analogy I can give you, what I think is going on, is I think this is a lot like in 2007 and 2008. Remember when crude oil just went parabolic and it just kept going and going and going and going, and then it popped. And that's the thing I think we're seeing in commodities. I think that's what interest rates is telling us we're seeing in commodities. Now, how long something can go parabolic, I don't know. Throw a dart at a board. The answer is until we get structured or cap it. But, I don't think you can put it in a box and say it's going to go on for this long. You have to see that evidence. But I do think that's where we're at with these commodity prices.
We'll have more with Tim Cyclesman Wood right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Tim Cyclesman Wood. Tim, if commodities are skyrocketing right now, when do you see the brakes being put to that?
Only when we see structure. Only when we see structure. I mean, that is key with everything. You know, all these other underlying factors, I mean, that's just the environment that we're in. Those are little, how do you say, little indications and trying to connect dots and figure out where you're at. But ultimately, it boils down to the structure. And, you know, just like going back to the advance in 2008 with commodities. And again, I mean, this was documented on the air call, but, everybody was talking about peak oil. There was even, and we may have talked about this in another interview, but, it's worth saying again. But it was so bad. It was kind of like the inflationary fears today. Peak oil was such a prominent thing that there was TV shows on CNBC talking about peak oil. And yet, the structure fell in place, and when it did, I called it on the air. And I'll call the guy's name if that's okay, with Jim Puplava at the time. I called it 1 week after that top when I saw the structure. And it was over. I mean, the structure fell in place, and it capped it, and it was over. And so the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, do we see the structure or do we not? I don't know. I mean, at some point we will, but until we do, you know, it is what it is. And it's the same way with the stock market. I'm just saying, I think that it is the interest rates that are telling us the tale that this is that environment. But again, we ultimately have to see the structure. In the meantime, hey, can lumber prices continue? Can oil prices continue? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I was wondering if it would be cheaper to use steel and glass to build a house now instead of using your traditional lumber, and there's actually an app you can get on your phone now that compares the costs. And of course, if you build out of steel and glass, it's going to last a lot longer than wood.
Yeah, or stone block. What would be wrong with having a stone block walls on the inside? And
not good if you're in an earthquake zone like Vancouver.
Okay.
Steel's great,
though. Well, it might work well
flexes.
in the hurricane area, like, you know, the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, I know. I saw an interesting show, you know, Hurricane Alley, where they build traditional houses, which tornadoes love. They lift the roof up, and then that collapses the building. And they said, well, unfortunately, there's no way to build a home that's resistant against tornadoes. And my friends from Miami were visiting, and they said, we have 2-foot thick concrete walls. We get hurricanes and the tornadoes that are spun off in Miami all the time. We have steel shutters on our windows, so yeah, we lose stuff in the garden, but our house is perfectly fine after a major storm. Yeah, you can build a tornado-resistant house. They just don't bother to, because I think the lumber makers encourage them to build that traditional farmhouse that the roof lifts off beautifully under a super low-pressure system.
Yeah, and after living on the Gulf Coast area, I don't understand why asphalt shingles are so prominent here. You know, as well. To that note, you know, why would people not go with metal roofs? I don't understand. I mean, the pricing of roofs it's crazy, and to have you know, a roof blown off and water in your house, I mean, basically it destroys your whole home if you lose your roof, but yet people put asphalt roofs on the houses. I don't get it.
Yeah, build cheap today, pay the price tomorrow. We'll have more with Tim Cyclesman Wood right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Tim Cyclesman Wood. Tim, what's your perspective on the U.S. dollar?
Well, it's trying to bottom. We may not be there just yet, but we're in the zone. There, I have windows where the cycle should bottom based on statistics, and I think we're on the early side of a window. There may be one more trip down before that low is in place, but the dollar is flirting with an intermediate degree low, and once in place, obviously, look for the dollar to go higher. But in the meantime, it's trying to find that low.
Interest rates, I know we talked about them to start off the show, but the relation between interest rates and the U.S. dollar, if the U.S. dollar starts to go up in price, does it drag interest rates up, or are interest rates the influence on the U.S. dollar?
Well, sometimes there is a correlation more so than others, and rather than draw a correlation, what I like to do is let the cycles stand on their own 2 feet. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes there's more of a lag, sometimes that relationship is more prominent, and there's plenty of examples in history we can go back and look at. But in answering your question, what I see here now is a bottom, an intermediate degree low in the bottom, in the dollar, like I said, at play. I mean, we're in the window, and then at the same time, we've had an intermediate degree low in bonds. So what I'm seeing, and when I say bonds, let me clarify, on the long end. So what I'm seeing is bond prices going up, so yield coming down on the long end, and on the short end, they didn't partake. The short end rates did not rise with the long end here, and now with the long end turning, I see continued pressure on the long end as well as the short end. And so as rates decline, in this particular case, I see a rising dollar because that's what the cycles are telling me.
Crude prices, some say they're surprisingly strong. What's your opinion?
Well, they are strong, and it's related to this everything bubble, if you will, and everything bouncing out of the post-COVID March, April to 2020 lows. And crude oil, I think they are. It is at a semi-important juncture where there's some intermediate degree cycle tops due. But again, until something bites, just like with lumber prices and everything else, this can continue. Is it stretched? Well, yeah, there's not been much of a correction since we came out of that low. But as with, the CRB index, as a whole, I do think that this is, cyclically speaking, a more of a counter trend advance. I think that once we move into a top and some structure falls in place, we're going to see it across all asset classes. And when I say all asset classes, I mean this. Obviously the CRB index, because we're talking about commodities. Obviously, a part of that is lumber, crude oil, and eventually equities. I think everything is extended, extremely much extended, and that we're moving into a clustering of cycle tops. But we have to build that structure, and so far we haven't done that, and it just continues.
The story with gold and silver.
Well, gold and silver, or gold specifically, we had an intermediate degree low back in March, and the advance out of that low, it remains very much intact. Last I looked, gold was up today pretty good, and that's reflective of that intermediate degree low. Now, at a higher level, I do think that the 9-year cycle top is in place in gold, and I believe that this is probably a counter-trend advance in gold as compared to that 9-year cycle top. In other words, I don't think this is going to take us to any kind of new high in gold. I think it's counter-trend, and probably here again what we should see is gold, the CRB, commodities, all asset classes pretty much peak in close proximity. That doesn't mean to the day. I mean, nothing works like that, but in close proximity once we move into these extended tops. On that note, someone sent me a chart and was asking me this morning, and this is true. If you look at bond prices and just do a simple overlay with gold, there is an eerie similarity since late 2018, and I just said that bonds had bottomed, and that I was looking for higher bond prices. Well, when you do that overlay, you see the exact same thing in gold. So it's kind of confirming what I'm saying about the intermediate degree cycle and low. So yes, I think for now gold is higher.
Tim, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Tim Cyclesman Wood, editor of Cycles News and Views on cyclesman.com. If you have any questions for Tim or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HouseStreet. We're also on Facebook. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.